It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. On this episode, we're continuing our Today in Manufacturing series in conjunction, as always, with the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance. Today, we're talking with a business leader that has been leading initiatives and operations in the manufacturing and supply chain world for years in a variety of sectors. So stay tuned for practical insights and observations. It'll certainly raise your leadership IQ. All right, before we get started, it's important to note that our series is brought to you by HLB Gross Collins, a top 25 Atlanta CPA firm specializing in manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain operations. The firm has extensive insight in the industry and understands the specific needs that these organizations face. One last quick programming note: if you like today's episode, be sure to find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. All right, I want to welcome in my fearless, esteemed co-hosts on today's show. First up, Jason Moss, CEO of the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance. Jason, how you doing?
Hey, Scott, man, I'm doing great. Glad to be on this call. It's going to be a fun one.
Oh, great to have you back. We've really enjoyed this series. We've had a solid string of hits, in terms of great guests. Yep. And I think this is going to be at least an off-the-wall double.
No doubt.
Probably a grand slam. We'll see.
Right.
And also, we couldn't do this without Laura Matajewski, principal and leader of the manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain practice at HLB Gross Collins. Laura, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Scott. It's excited to be here today. It's a gorgeous day out here in Atlanta. Finally can get outside and enjoy some of this beautiful weather.
Yes, we have been spoiled. With the exception of some of those bad storms that have come through in the last few weeks, we have really been blessed with this early spring weather continuing into May. All right, well, great to have you back. Looking forward to the conversation we've got teed up. Let's welcome in our featured guest here today, Erricka Bowman, Group Manager, DC Operations for North America at the Clorox Company. Erricka, how you doing?
I'm good, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing, given the challenging set of circumstances that we all are facing, I think we're as good as can be. So I appreciate all of y'all carving out some time. And Erricka, you've got one heck of a story we're going to be diving into.
Oh yeah. I'm glad to be here to be able to share a little bit of my story. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Okay, so let's start by getting to know Erricka Bowman a little bit better here. So tell us, where'd you grow up, and give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing.
Alrighty. I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
So I am a Buckeye, right? Ohio State Buckeye fan. Did not go to Ohio State. It was just a little too close to home. But ended up going to college in Washington, D.C. So a little bit more about my family. Mom and dad and a younger sister. So I was that oldest sister, guidance, watching out for everything,
right,
well as dad's right hand. So my dad was a skilled tradesman and in the glazer industry, and so was right there with him all the time, right? Understanding different tools, very hands-on. Dad, what are you doing? So
hey, real quick, Erricka. I think I've got, and I'm usually the slowest one in these conversations, but I think I've got an inkling of what glazering is, but for our audience members that may not, in a nutshell, what do you do when you're glazering?
Yeah, so a skilled trade in that he was responsible for installing glass, right? So whether it's door fronts, windows, mirrors, in both industrial as well as residential projects.
Wow. I bet that is a super skilled trade, steady hands, expertise.
Measure twice, right? Install once.
Love that. And I love that you were right, as you said it, you're right, his right hand man, taking care, learning right along with him. I bet you were involved in some of the the jobs and saw it firsthand. Those are some special experiences, I bet.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think very instrumental in what I decided to do career-wise, right? So had an opportunity of just, asking a lot of why and how is this glass made that you're dealing with. I think that's one of my fondest memories growing up is, I believe it was middle school where we had a science project, and I, dug into the encyclopedias at that time, no Google, dug into the encyclopedias of just what is glass, how is it made, even though my dad was installing it. So just trying to get to the history and the process of things.
Love that. And we're going to talk about your professional journey before Clorox in a moment, but you mentioned you went to school in D.C. I believe that was at Howard University, right?
Howard University, yes, right there in the heart of Northwest D.C.
How was that, going to school in the nation's capital?
It was great. It was great. I, again, grew up in a suburb of Columbus, so a little sheltered, right, of the positiveness of what a suburb gives to you as you're growing up, and then to head off to Washington, D.C., and at that time in the late 80s, D.C. had some history to it or had some action to it, right? But it was great. It was a great 4.5 years, right, of wonderful university as well as a city in itself.
So do you take part in reunions and staying in touch with your classmates?
Oh yeah. A lot of real good lifelong friends made, right, through the engineering program, as well as just living the dorm life and the college life. So, oh yeah, every year we are back on our campus and celebrating our homecoming every year.
Love that. All right. So did I hear you right? You graduated with an engineering degree?
Yes, chemical engineering.
Chemical engineering. All right. So you're already above at least my pay grade on this interview. I'll let Jason and Laura speak for themselves. Tell us about your first job and kind of give us a Reader's Digest version of that first job leading up to your role with Clorox.
Sure. I started off with some internships. In my sophomore year going into my junior year, I got an internship with an oil company. And it was a great opportunity, great experience. And I tell folks all the time, it was an opportunity to understand what am I going to be doing for the rest of my life based on what I learned for the last 9 months, right? So started off with an internship at a gas company. And I will say through that experience was able to say, I don't like sitting in an office. Then the last internship I did before graduation was with Eli Lilly and Company in Indiana. And that in itself was at a manufacturing facility, a big plant. So
pharmaceuticals, right?
Yep, pharmaceuticals, exactly. So that was an opportunity to say, okay, you didn't like office work. Let's see what the plant life leads and how you adjust to this. And I was hooked.
Love
so
that.
Ended up going with them full time in my first couple of years out of college.
So did you inherit that from your dad, who I'm assuming didn't like to be in the office? He liked to be out making stuff happen, right?
Right, for sure.
So what came after the pharmaceutical industry?
I had a couple other jobs with some other companies, not as long in duration. I did some materials production. I did actually some car part manufacturing, and then I landed at Anheuser-Busch. There in Columbus is where I started with them, and had experience in management as well as process engineering and project engineering, and got a real good role with them, and stuck there for about 11 years. 11 great years. Yeah.
And that was at Anheuser-Busch, right?
Correct. So I started off in the Columbus, Ohio brewery.
Yep.
And then I moved around a little bit. Went from Columbus to St. Louis. Then from St. Louis out to Newark, New Jersey. And then from Newark, New Jersey down here to Cartersville, Georgia.
Right. And small world, Jason, I bet you have led GMA tours at the Cartersville Brewery a couple times in the last 10 years or so, right?
As a matter of fact, we have, and that's one of our most favorite tours. People to recall, we tell lots of stories around that, but it's a amazing facility.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, Jason, Laura, and myself all have a big appreciation, having been part of those tours, of how Anheuser-Busch pivots during times of disaster and national emergencies, and converts over to making canned water.
Yep.
That is, I think they've been doing some of that here in the last, no, I take that back. I think they've been finding ways of making hand sanitizer with some of their excess raw materials in recent months. And that's just, I think that's a hallmark of a great company, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those two examples plus many, many more, but you're exactly right. We've got an opportunity to support in that water canning process, right, as different natural disasters occurred across the globe. And it was wonderful to realize, right, that we're making beer one day and beer is one of those luxuries, right, in most of our lives. But then to be able to turn around and make water, which is so vital to just survival. So, yeah.
Okay. So what followed your 11 years at this iconic brand being Anheuser-Busch? What came next?
Came next was the Clorox Company.
Okay.
So, yeah, stayed right here in Georgia and joined Clorox.
So we're going to dive into that more in just a moment. Hey, Laura, I'm going to bring you in. I know you've got a couple of questions for Rebecca, but before you get to those, Laura, what stands out to you? What's your favorite part of the journey that Rebecca has kind of laid out there?
I think for me, it's hearing the story from the intrigue and the desire to learn from what her father was doing, which is kind of what drove me. So it speaks a lot to my story. My father was an engineer. Well, still is, but I don't want to say was. Like he'll listen to this and I'll get in trouble with that was. Yeah, it's really what drives us to kind of find that passion that feeds our desire to get out there and do and really kind of integrate ourselves in something that's going to be a part of the bigger process, the better good, however you'd like to describe it. So that certainly was something that I thought was really intriguing to hear Rebecca share. I'm learning all sorts of new things today.
I love that. All right. So I know you've got a couple of curious questions for Rebecca.
Yes, I do. The first one is, Rebecca, what is one thing that most folks may not know about you that you'd love to share with our listening audience?
That's a really good question. And I think one would be my sense of adventure. Yeah. And you can think about that in a couple of different ways, right? So I've lived in 12 different states since graduating from college, and being able to make those moves across country, different states, solo, right? As well as the leisure side. I am scuba certified, I snow ski, I kayak. I used to do triathlons. I used to own a motorcycle. So just that spirit of adventure is pretty high in me.
Amazing. Have you done Everest yet? Or is that on your list?
That one is not on the list. I think skiing in some of these mountains around the States is about as high as I'm going to get.
Laura, before you move to your next question, Jason, you're a fella, and Laura, you may be too. I don't know. I know Jason is a motorcycling hobbyist and passionate about that. Did y'all know you had that in common, Jason?
No, that's pretty cool. I tell you, anytime that it's sunny out, we're trying to fire the bike up. Are you still riding?
I am not, actually. I am not, but I still have the M on my driver's license.
Okay, so you can pick back up
whenever. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. So Laura, we've got one more before we talk more about the Clorox Company. I know you've got one other question.
Absolutely. So Rebecca, I think there's something that we like to tune into each of our guests and get some ideas of where you find sources for information that kind of feeds your day-to-day. You know, maybe it's both a combination of personal and professional or one or the other, but do you have any go-to sources for content or news or business insights that you'd love to share with us?
I think from a business insights perspective, I do keep in tune with the competition, right? So just understanding the consumer goods industry, what others are doing and how they're approaching some things, just to understand what's happening in somebody else's four walls and how they're approaching different opportunities or situations. So just trying to stay insightful of what others are doing on the professional side. I think on the personal side, I work a lot with people, right? Even with an engineering degree, and some folks may think it's very much a technical. I work with people. I work to get things done through people. So there's a sense of how do you communicate, how do you interact, and how do you motivate and influence others. So I tend to always pick up my book on just understanding the psyche of people and what motivates them and how they respond to change is a big one for me. So there are definitely some go-to books that I read and reread, right, to stay in tune with those techniques and things to keep in mind about people.
Fantastic. Yeah, leadership is huge. I think that's been an even bigger presence in business management, business leaders the past couple of months as we've been going through everything in the environment right now with the virus. So yeah, I just picked up a good book on myself called Pretty Good Advice by Leslie Blodgett, and so yeah, I'm doing the same thing. So it's great to hear that you continue to feed that part of yourself as well too, because it is all a big psychological process.
It is.
Laura, Jason and I are beginning to pick up just how much of a voracious reader you are in doing this series together. You got a couple different books each time. It seems like we reconnect.
I know. Yeah. I'm not sure where I'm exactly finding the time. So maybe.
It is tough.
That's for a whole other conversation.
Right. That's right. Well, Rebecca, good stuff. And going back to what you mentioned about, best practices from what other folks are doing. We've seen a lot of the demand in that specific, in general, that never goes away, but we've seen a lot of organizations and business leaders really crave to figure out how other organizations have been navigating through these challenging times. And also, fortunately, we've seen a lot of sharing of that and finding new ways, digital ways to share that here in recent months. Want to shift gears. Let's talk about the Clorox Company. And look, everyone probably listening to this podcast has heard of and has used plenty of products that is part of the Clorox family. But for the 3 or 4 people that aren't familiar, Rebecca, in a nutshell, what does the company do?
So you're right. I hope it's just about 3 people out there listening to this that are not
Right.
familiar. But Clorox is a multinational manufacturer and a marketer of consumer and professional products. Wide stream of products there. We've got about 9,000 employees worldwide, and we operate in 25 different countries.
Big footprint, big family brands that are probably in our listeners, maybe in their hands at work right now, keeping things clean and safe and orderly. All right, so let's talk about your role within the Clorox Company. And in a moment, Jason, we're going to share just how small this world is and some of the ways that we've seen and connected with the Clorox Company locally here in Atlanta. So, Rebecca, what is your role and where do you spend your time?
So my role today is group manager with responsibility over our distribution center operations in North America. So once product is produced, I ensure that we have accurate inventory and we're managing that inventory to then put against orders that our customer has put in request and for our product. So we have about 44 distribution centers in the United States and Canada, and they all fall under me. So that operation, whether it's day-to-day, different innovations that can happen in our distribution centers, as well as managing our 3PL relationships.
I am not envious of your leadership role at the Clorox Company, and we have, as we've covered the global pandemic environment we're all in, we've uncovered some of the stark differences from regionalized disaster, right, where it might impact, the retail supply chain in a town or a state or even a couple of states. But in this environment where there's a global impact, it's got to be incredibly challenging to carry out and constantly adjust to information as it comes in, and how the situation, I'm sure, evolves day in and day out. So on that note, Jason, you've got an interesting question, I think, to pose to Ericka.
Yeah, I tell you, we toured Clorox a few years ago, and I had the opportunity to meet Paul Unitas. What a great guy! The whole crew out at Clorox welcomed us with open arms. We learned a lot about what was going on. But I did want to ask you, what is something that folks might not know about the company?
I hope it's very minimal, honestly, as we heard. I hope it is, but I think there are a few things about the brands that fall under Clorox. Right. It's interesting when I talk to people just in different social circles, and they find out that I work for Clorox. They know the bleach brand, right, and some of the cleaning disinfectants. Yep. But when I name off some other brands, for example, Hidden Valley Ranch dressing, right, or Kingsford charcoal, or Burt's Bees products, they're all looking at me like, no, that's not you. So yeah, very wide brands and portfolio for us.
Yeah, it was really pretty surprising as we walked through the factory, seeing so many different brand names and logos that we're so familiar with in our day-to-day lives. So it was pretty cool. I mean, I love to see the diversity there. Absolutely.
And to your point, Ericka, all the different brands, a lot of folks don't always make those connections back to it all being under the same umbrella. It's been fascinating as we've had a couple different folks on the show through the years. All right, so with that said, we want to pivot over to manufacturing at the Clorox Company, which is part of the global supply chain operations and footprint. So Ericka, give us a few observations around manufacturing and what it's like, and how it takes place at the Clorox Company from your experience.
So yeah, as I started with Clorox, I started at the Atlanta plant. Paul Unitas and my paths crossed there for the first time, and it's pretty typical manufacturing, right? So in terms of raw materials, right, being procured, processing them together with different recipes and different formulas of how the final product is produced to ensure effectiveness and efficacy, right, of what the product's intended for. And then there's various packaging that we then put the product into. So sometimes we're actually making some of the packaging materials, mostly the containers or bottles, and sometimes we're not. And then configuring a different case configuration, so how many bottles are going to be in a case, and then shipping it to our distribution network. So very insightful, but again, it's different based on the variety of brands we have, right? The number of components or raw materials that go into the product, the packaging, obviously, but yeah, it's great stuff. Great stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, I'm not sure which facility you toured. Was it the Forest Park manufacturing site?
Yep, it was.
We toured there probably 3 or 4 years ago, Ericka, and we didn't talk about this in the prep conversation, but the lean and just the general continuous improvement showcase that facility was really, it still stands out. 3 or 4 years later. Jason, did you have the same experience?
Yeah, Paul. I mean, when you go on these tours, you really don't know exactly what to expect. that's always fun to kind of experience those. But one of the things I was prepped for, I mean, you're going into a factory that manufactures bleach, and we walked through the door and there was like zero odor. I was thinking that you would be like overwhelmed with the, fumes or whatever. And I mean, I knew it had, it's going to have to be safe, but it was so cool. I mean, the lean operations and the cleanliness and of that operation still stands out, and we get lots of comments about it even to this day.
Love it. And I know we all can't wait until we can do some of those plant tours again in person. I've heard of folks setting up digital plant tours these days, which is pretty innovative, but I look forward to just like Rebecca pointed out on the front end of the conversation of how she liked, being out of the office and seeing things and being a part of things. That's one of the coolest elements of the plant tours I've been on. All right, so Rebecca, did you know that the Clorox Company received the Manufacturing Excellence Award at our second year Atlanta Supply Chain Awards in March, just before the whole world, at least here in the States, changed. They received that award, and actually, this is how small of a world it is. Paul Unitas, Jason, and Rebecca, and Laura accepted the award at the show, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
And it was neat, second year in a row, neat to have the GMA part of that and sponsor that award. Now, Jason asked me, what was behind some of that excellence at the Clorox Company? That's when you're supposed to ask me, Jason.
Hi, Scott. Really? What was behind all of that?
There we go. All right. So, Rebecca, I'm probably, this is you already know, we're familiar with this stuff, but what we found and what our judging committee found, the incredible cultural focus on safety really stood out. Just how few incidents the company has amongst its 9,000 employees. Incredible and constant dedication to talent and leadership development. Rick McDonald talked about some of the leadership development programs that the company has been collaborating with Georgia Tech to roll out, which was really incredible. The commitments to sustainability. I think Barron's had named the Clorox Company on its list of 100 most sustainable companies here recently. And of course, what Jason and I spoke to a minute ago, the long-standing commitment and more importantly, the proven track record for continuous improvement. Rebecca, being part of the team now for a while at the Clorox Company, of those or other qualities of the culture, what has meant the most to you?
All of those points. It's really truly an honor to be a part of an organization that is so focused on people. In any situation and in any circumstance, right? So I've been with Clorox now 10 years, and I would say the first 9 years were kind of business as normal, right? We produce a product, folks buy it, and love how it works. As a company, we're focused on our employee safety and our manufacturing facilities and our office locations and our warehouses, and we speak it as well as act it every day. And I think here in this last year now, with the response to the COVID virus and the opportunity to really put our product out there to help combat it, we have not taken our eye off of our people, and ensuring that as we are serving the broader consumer, we're also keeping our own employees and team members forefront of everything. So again, this 10-year journey with Clorox has just been phenomenal because of their commitment and their really consistency around the talk as well as action of putting people first.
Love that. Love that. And that's what we've seen firsthand, both in the plant tours and in the interactions of members of the team coming on and sharing their perspective. So it's not lip service. And I can't tell you how much we've talked, Jason and Laura, on previous shows about action-focused leadership. It means it is so important these days not to have as little lip service leadership as we can.
Yeah, it stands out in the marketplace. I guarantee you that.
Absolutely. Okay. So Rebecca, now we're going to kind of broaden back out on a couple of topics, but I want to, as you, survey the landscape of global supply chain, there's no shortage of challenges, very unique times we're living in. Whether it's related to COVID-19 or if it's related to other things taking place and impacting global supply chain, what's a topic or two or issue or impact or development or two that you're tracking more than others here lately?
I think, to your point, right, pre-COVID and as we're in COVID, in my role right now, it is truly about customer service, right? So as our customer base is requesting product, how are we quickly responding to that demand and efficiently, right, responding to that demand? So one of the things kind of top of my let's improve, let's get better about it, let's understand what other opportunities exist out there is truly shortening up that distribution channel to from manufacturer to consumer. We've got a lot of efforts, whether you think about it in terms of efficiency in a warehouse and how quickly we can load a truck, for example, or how quickly we can get a individual case or unit to the end consumer, right, through the e-commerce channels.
Right.
So that's just shortening that lead time from manufacturer to consumer is pretty big for me right now.
Yep. I bet living in it every day.
Every day.
Especially with the demand for the historical. I'm not sure. I can only speak from the research we've done in the food industry, some of the historical levels of demand they've seen there, and we've seen it, spill over in other sectors. Just what an incredible job that folks in the manufacturing force, logistics, supply chain, warehousing, fulfillment, you name it. Even the folks in the retail environments that are, showing up and stocking shelves and selling product to customers. I mean, those folks are, are brave and integral parts of how the whole ecosystem works too. So much to be grateful for there. Before we move on to this next, any other, Rebecca, I'm not sure if you had any other trends or topics you're tracking before we talk about talent in the industry. Anything else you wanted to add before we move to talent?
I think one more thing to add is an initiative and an effort that we've got going on across our full supply chain, and it's what we call the digital supply network. And so focusing again on our end-to-end supply chain, how we become more efficient with it and executing it, and what are the tools really that we can utilize to make sure we are hitting new and stretch goals and new targets in every way. So we are fully focused again end-to-end supply chain. What digital tools are there, right? And then what those digital tools mean for our workforce. We're doing that in concert with each other, right? Because again, with our focus on people, right, we're not going to just bring in tool sets, but we're also going to help them get their skill set to fully operate, understand, and guide the tools that we can find in our supply chain. So
love that.
That's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Love that. I just this morning I came across a quote from our friends over at the Effective Syndicate. I'm not sure who they cited, but basically the gist was, if you involve people in planning the battle plan, those people are less likely to battle the plan once it's put into place. So to your point, Rebecca, when you bring the people, the most valuable component of the organization to the table to help figure out what that plan is, in this case related to the tools that you were mentioning, that's not to be missed, right? That's a big part of seems like a big part of y'all's success recipe over at the Clorox Company.
Absolutely. It ensures a win every time.
Love that. Ensures a win every time. That's a t-shirt, Rebecca. We're going to have to owe you some royalties. All right. So let's talk about talent. And, for years, getting talent into the manufacturing industry in supply chain industry, as you put it, Rebecca, that's been a challenge, especially as our industry is now, it has to have top talent, due to all the complexity and the global nature of business these days, and the technology that's involved. How do we, Rebecca, do you have a couple of best practices when we talk about ensuring that global supply chain provides opportunities for all, and that we're really effectively bringing in not just top talent, but a diversitude of talent into the industry? What are some initial thoughts you've got there?
I think that you mentioned a couple of the programs that the company has in terms of leadership development. So those are at least 3 that roll off the top of my head, plus quite a few others that we have in place and once somebody is with us. So that's, again, a focus on leadership skills, a focus on people development and development of our skill set there. I think the other piece is being able to recognize what are these skill sets, right, that success need, or what success looks like when you're in the supply chain end of manufacturing or of an industry. So we're definitely, very high, very dedicated, very deliberate with a lot of the people skill sets, right? So your communication style, your experience in how to influence, your experience in how to lead. I think those are tools that you can develop in many different aspects of a career, right? It doesn't have to be in an engineering role. And us being Clorox, being able to identify those skill sets, no matter what the situation or example is in your past, right? And then being able to help you, once you're with Clorox, to further refine those skills.
Love that. So if I could, let's go upstream for a minute. So when you were matriculating, easy for you to say, through Howard University in the nation's capital in the chemical engineering program, when you think about any other fellow female members of that class and what got them into engineering programs, what can we do more of there?
That's a great question, because it's one that has been on my mind and in front of me and a focus area, I think, since day one. So Howard University is a historically Black college and university, right? So the engineering program, very, very good. The engineering program, when I was going through, was mostly men, mostly male-dominated area. But my chemical engineering class was extremely unique in that we had 11 students and 10 of them were women.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is you're surprising me with that curveball, Rebecca. That is outstanding. 10 of 11.
Yeah.
So what's the secret sauce there?
I'm sorry?
What's the secret sauce? What was
well,
there any?
I don't know that it's been repeated. Let's be clear. I don't know that number and that ratio has been repeated, but I think coming through that program with those 10 women was, and then seeing the other programs in engineering, right? So electrical and civil, that they were more male dominated, put a sense of pride and realization into our minds that we can do this too. And getting the opportunity to lead different organizations, right? So whether it was AICHE or National Society of Black Engineers or any of those organizations in the chemical engineering wing, just validated for us that we can do this. And I think as I have progressed in my career, making sure that others have the opportunity to say at the end of the day, I can do this. Sometimes it's about what is this, right? Sure. What is it? And so giving them exposure and opportunity and experiences, but then at the end of that experience, for them to be able to walk away and say, I can do this. It's been so instrumental in my career and in my self-worth and my satisfaction of how do I give back? How do I help others?
Love that. We talked about, Rebecca, in the pre-show conversation about something that I think we both hear a lot of and see a need for, and that is making female leaders not just in supply chain, but really across business, more visible, which helps women that are going through, college or even, in high school or even earlier in elementary school, they can identify and help them identify what and define what that, to your point, what this is that they can do. Is that, you see that as a critical
Absolutely.
critical
Absolutely.
thing we can do?
Absolutely. And I think it's the experiences and exposures, right? Of there's so many thises out there, right? There are so many opportunities and things you can get into, and especially again in the STEM side of things, where my career has been science, technology, engineering, and math. I think once you get exposed, sky's the limit.
That's right. Yep. Experiences and exposure. That's a great way of putting it. And Jason, I'm going to come to you in just a second. I'd love to get your take on some of the things you're seeing companies do to really make sure that everyone has an opportunity, and more importantly, that awareness piece. But Laura, you've got an interesting tie-in here that we've learned over the last couple of years. HLB Gross Collins, again, is not a manufacturer, but the challenge in some ways stays the same in other sectors. And in the accounting industry, HLB Gross Collins really stands out because y'all got a commitment to ensuring women are coming into the tax and accounting industry, right?
Absolutely, Scott. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's been a particular passion of mine, just in growing that awareness and bringing in the next generation and the next generation, et cetera, for that. But our firm absolutely has. We've been recognized for growth and women leadership in our firm, and we're particularly proud of the fact that we're kind of helping to truly lead the pack in that front, because it has been a fairly male-dominated industry. And so opportunities for us to be able to share forward and continue to provide educational and leadership resources to females to get them to understand that they have just as much of an opportunity to be extremely successful in this world. And so that kind of ties in very closely to my passion within the manufacturing and distribution supply chain space, because there is, there still tends to be this larger factor here, but, how can we continue to do best practices and bring the right people to the table and provide those educational resources and opportunities? I guess some people tend to think we fall into the M side maybe of STEM and as accountants and in the math side of things, even though, I think I did all right in algebra, but I couldn't touch what Erricka does with a 10-foot pole. But it did remind me of when my father was at Tech for his master's, and the fact that when my mom came to visit him when they were engaged, she said that she's never seen so many of the male party join into a teeny tiny dorm room as she had experienced, because she was practically the only female on campus at that time.
Wow.
So yeah. So I think from that perspective, to kind of sum it up, it's truly an important side that we feel a strong part of our initiative, not only just in our firm, but through our HLB international group as well. So we're very fortunate to continue to drive the initiatives towards bringing more women into the profession.
Love it. And I love that you lead the manufacturing, distribution, supply chain practice at HLB Gross Collins. I want to see a lot more of that. So Erricka and Laura, thanks for sharing your experiences and experiences and exposures. Again, it goes back to what Erricka shared. We're going to, we're big believers of trying to use our little spotlight here at Supply Chain Now to help in that awareness piece as best we can. All right, so Jason, weigh in on what you've heard here. What resonates to you, or what have you seen out there in the industry that really is helping us get all the top talent and the diversity of talent into the industry?
Right, I tell you, that's a great topic to always talk about is trying to get the right talent in the manufacturing. The more that we work on manufacturing, we got to make sure that we bring more awareness to the industry as a whole, because by default, people think that manufacturing is that dirty, dangerous, dead-end job that you do when you can't do something else, right? I mean, that's just the, I've got a son that's in college now, and a lot of our peers, in this age group are looking around, and, and I talk about, potential opportunities in manufacturing for careers. And again, it's really, for a lot of folks, it's frowned on because they don't understand what modern technology is and manufacturing is all about. And well, that's one of the reasons we're so passionate about doing live events and bringing people in so that they can walk through, if we can walk people through a factory to see what's really going on in those environments, it kind of peels back the curtain a little bit, and they see that they're safe, good, solid, stable jobs where people have an opportunity, for a solid career. One of the things that just continues to ring through on everything that I heard Rebecca share with us is talking about long-term career opportunities in this industry. And it's, for men and women, and no matter, kind of what the status is, we're able to bring them in and provide some really cool opportunities, but we got to just increase the exposure and the opportunity for people to see what that looks like. So, and with that, one of the things that we love to do is, and we've been supporting WIM, which is Women in Manufacturing. I know you guys are very familiar with that, but for the past several years, we've been inviting and donating a booth at our big event to be able to help bring awareness of the WIM association in the state of Georgia. So WIM Georgia, it's not a huge organization yet, but we want to be able to support as GMA to share our platform with bringing more awareness about the women in manufacturing and the successes that they're having. I couldn't ask for a better partner in business in GMA than I have with Laura, because she really understands the engineering side, the manufacturing community, and is so well respected in that. And it's really cool to be able to, staff up our team, with successful leaders in that space. And we've got a couple other females that are helping us in leadership. And, putting pretty much everybody else to shame. Yes, I'll brag on Laura a little bit, but, and I think the more the more that we can give opportunities, and kind of just get out of the way and see the magic happen. So, this is really cool. I think with this reset with the coronavirus, a lot of people are reconsidering what the options are out there. And, I think it's a great, the future looks pretty bright ahead.
Absolutely. Well, we conducted an interview, Rebecca, Laura, and Jason, with 3 supply chain students at the University of Georgia a few weeks back. And I got to tell you, I'm still blown away from, I haven't quite put my finger on it yet, but the level of practical knowledge that they had. And I think, I can't remember the exact mix. I think we had 1 junior and two seniors, I believe. But just the practical level of knowledge they had, but how well spoken, how measured, just how strong, how effective they were at communicating their insights and their observations and what they wanted to do. To your point, Jason, the future is very bright. But as we all know, all 4 of us here on this podcast, we got to keep doing the heavy lifting so that we continue to bring the brightest and a diverse mix of talent into the industry, so that we can have, that beautiful thing of varied perspective, and which helps, solve problems differently, and helps drive innovation and new product development, and, helps us solve old problems and new problems. All right. So we've covered a lot of, that conversation could be a 3-week episode. There's so many different components there, but Rebecca, I want to give you, right before we ask you how our audience can connect with you and certainly learn more about the Clorox Company, I want to give you the last word on that. Maybe give you the opportunity to challenge business leaders or for that matter, students just coming into the industry, right? Maybe they just graduated or are graduating and they're about to, embark on their path. They still have, like we all do, an obligation to kind of give back and help others and pull them up the ladder. Your final thought.
Yeah, Scott, I heard that podcast of Supply Chain Now a couple of weeks back with those students, and to your point, I was so impressed. They were so much further along than I was at that point in my college career, right? Let alone professional. So I agree 100% in that it really is about continuing being focused on exposing others to what's available. Jason, you mentioned it too, that manufacturing's got a lot of rewards and a lot of personal satisfaction from a career standpoint and a personal perspective. And to be able to walk in a store and point to something that you can say, I know how that was produced, right? I know how that made it to the shelf, is something a lot of people can't do. So if folks have that level of, I like to be able to say I know something that somebody else doesn't, manufacturing, supply chain, that is the way to do it. And then now to your point with the COVID situation, a lot of folks are being appreciative of it, even though they may not understand it, right? But they're appreciative of what it takes to get that product, whatever the product may be, to their homes. So just continue to expose people and help share what your experiences have been and what you love and what your passion is around supply chain.
Love that. And then that is part of the silver lining that we've talked about through a variety of shows, is that new folks are understanding, not only are they saying the word supply chain, but they're understanding what's behind it and why that's important. And hopefully that'll be a boon, in the years to come, in building out the talent pipeline across the board, all walks of life, impacting, manufacturing, procurement, reverse logistics, which is also an aspect of global supply chain that more and more consumers are appreciating these days. All right, so Rebecca, really have enjoyed your perspective. I wish we could make this a double-hour episode, but tell us, how can our listeners connect with you on some level, and how can they learn more about the Clorox Company?
I've thoroughly enjoyed this, so thank you for the time. I can be reached on LinkedIn at Rebecca Bowman, and the Clorox Company as well. We have a website, thecloroxcompany.com, all one word, and then we are also on LinkedIn.
Outstanding. Well, really appreciate what you shared and your perspective, and taking, I'm sure you've got a hectic day, taking an hour out or so with us to spend time and sharing your insights. So thanks so much, Rebecca Bowman, Group Manager, DC Operations for all of North America. Holy cow, the Clorox Company. Thanks so much. All right, so we're going to wrap up here today. Jason and Laura, I want to get some of your observations. And Laura, we want to start with you. Give us, in the world of manufacturing, what is one thing that you've been keeping your finger on the pulse of?
All right. Yeah, Scott. Well, gosh, it's always comes to this point where I have to pin it down to one thing. Darn it. Yeah, that could be weeks and weeks of conversation. So I think what I'm seeing right now, and it kind of touches on, I think, a point that was really prevalent through the show today, is leadership. And what we're seeing is we're on the fly people that honestly, didn't realize the integral part they play through the supply chain and their manufacturers, and they're stepping up to the plate, and they're basically becoming leaders right on the spot. Bringing in new ideas, working side by side even more so. And so when we're talking about businesses coming up with these projections of what is my next quarter going to really look like now, how are we bringing everything back on board to what our new norm is going to be? These people that were out on the floor, that might have thought they were behind the scenes, are even more crucial than ever now. They're helping to bring all the data and all the interesting information and insights and all those relationships that they've worked to maintain and build. And they're bringing the thought leadership to the table to help invigorate and come up with the better, more efficient, safer, whatever you want to kind of label it as, ways to take that manufacturing business or distributor, whatever it might be, and bring them back online even more invigorated than they were before. So there's just, I'm not seeing any lines. The lines are all blurred, which is really exciting for people, because there's even more investment now in what it meant to be a part of the culture of that organization. So that's really my one big observation I'm seeing right now is leadership is shifting for the good, and there's a lot more integration and listening and implementation of things that are going to be really for the long term, some exciting new angles and insights that we're going to continue to see from manufacturers all over the U.S. here as we're going through it, and then also internationally as well too, and how the dynamics of those are all changing the positive things that are coming out of that.
Great point. Great point. And you know, that's another biggest part of the silver lining to this challenging time is it fuels innovation. You know, we've got automotive manufacturers making ventilators. We've got breweries helping to make hand sanitizer. We talked yesterday with a technology firm that's coming up with a way and partnering with the healthcare industry to track down where all this equipment goes, evidently, and talking with my mom, who's a retired nurse. There's a tremendous lack of visibility sometimes with some of this critical care PPE or ventilators or other equipment in healthcare. So it does, you know, fuel innovation, new ideas, new solutions, and looking forward to, as we move into the aftermath of this pandemic, as Gartner calls it, looking forward to seeing a lot more stories around that uplifts us all. All right, so if it's challenging for Laura to share one observation, we're now moving to the challenge of the day, and that is for Jason to pick an update or two from the wide world of the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance and the Manufacturing News Network. All right, so Jason, what do you have your finger on right now?
You know, I'll share the observation is community and relationships, and it is really interesting to see that how the general population is now seeing the importance of manufacturing and the supply chain. You know, from Clorox to toilet paper to understanding that we may have the product, but we got to get it to the consumer, and, you know, and what that supply chain really means. And I believe, you know, that it will have the opportunity to challenge people to step up to say, I want to be a part of making sure that, you know, that we find solutions, long-term solutions, so that if we ever get impacted like this as a country again, that we won't have the gaps that we've seen. So I think the opportunity is fantastic. I think it's going to challenge the right people to come to the table to play. And, you know, and so that plus the exciting opportunities to see, you know, more manufacturing being reshored to the U.S., you know, that's what I see on the radar. And as far as updates for GMA, we've been doing at least one, if not two, conference calls and roundtables, educational sessions every day since the 1st of March. And our goal is to help support manufacturers across the state and provide them information and opportunity to learn best practices from each other. We used to do that live, but now we're doing it all virtually. And all that information is on a page that we've got listed on our site called Manufacturing News Network. We've got some really cool interviews. I actually had the opportunity to interview Scott not long ago, last week or so, and did a great job kind of telling about what was going on in supply chain, you know, radio. And it's really cool to see, you know, how this is fitting in the supply chain and supporting the supply chain community, and partnering with the manufacturing, you know, challenges that we're facing, because you can't manufacture products unless you've got your supply chain intact, feeding you and then getting it to the customer. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out over the next few months. I know that, you know, we are a very resilient country, and the leaders that we've got that are stepping up to the table to take on the challenges we got ahead. I don't know that we're out of the woods yet, but I know I'm glad I'm on the right team and working in the right area. Hopefully, you know, the things that we bring to the table from GMA are making a difference. And we'd encourage everybody, if you're interested in plugging in, we've got a variety of calls to plug in. We do a town hall on Monday, and then a variety of call through the middle of the week. On Fridays at 4 o'clock, we do a fun Friday. So it's a social hour. So anybody's welcome to come join us for those calls. So, but it's all on manufacturingnewsnetwork.com. And that's just again, a page of GMA.
Outstanding. It's a lot to plug into, a lot of resources, best practices, and a little bit of a departure from the stresses of the current environment, which we've heard a lot about as well. All right, so good stuff. Real quick, Laura, how can they connect with you and HLB Gross Collins?
Absolutely, Scott. So I echo Rebecca's comments. So you can absolutely reach me on LinkedIn. Please do. I'm on there, oh gosh, all the time it seems like. So you can also find me on my firm's website, hlbgrosscollins.com, or you can email me at lmadajewski, MADAJEWSKI, at grosscollins.com. Happy to connect with you, answer any questions, hopefully make some positive impacts and get a chance to know some new people.
Outstanding. And Jason, of course, you've mentioned the Manufacturing News Network. I know you can be tracked down on LinkedIn, and the GMA's website is?
GeorgiaManufacturingAlliance.com.
Perfect. Nice, neat, easy. Well, this has been a pleasure. What a great guest, Jason and Laura, that we got in Erricka Bowman today. Really enjoyed her perspective. We'll have to have her back maybe towards the end of the year, and we'll see how 2020 plays out for both her and the Clorox Company. Jason and Laura, thanks for your time. This series has really been enjoyable. Such, the leadership insights in particular, and anecdotes and thoughts on action-based leadership. That common theme that weaves its way throughout these Today in Manufacturing episodes has been one that, in particular, I've really enjoyed. So hopefully you have as well. All right. So I want to thank Erricka Bowman again with the Clorox Company, Jason Moss, CEO of the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance, and Laura Madajewski, Principal and Leader of the Manufacturing, Distribution, and Supply Chain Practice at HLB Gross Collins. As we mentioned, this series wouldn't be possible without the support of the great team over at HLB Gross Collins. So as we wrap up here today, I want to invite our audience to check out all of the industry thought leadership that you can find at supplychainnowradio.com, or email us. If you can't find something you're looking for, it's always seems to be my problem. You can email us at amanda@supplychainnowradio.com, and we'll do our best to serve as a resource for you. On behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton wishing all of our listeners a successful week ahead. Hold the faith. Brighter days absolutely lie ahead in the weeks and months to come, and we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.